All right, so it's time for another episode of the Nerdy Virgin podcast. I feel like when I just said that just now, I was trying to sound as cool as possible, but with a name like Nerdy Virgin, I need to keep reminding myself I'm never going to win. I'm never going to win the war when it comes to cool versus not cool. I'm not cool. I don't sound cool. Whenever I listen to recordings of myself, I sound either emotionally detached or Jewish. I feel like those are the two things that I sound. Now, there are some people who sound Jewish and are cool. I am not one of those people. I also got to work on the emotionally detached thing. I have to let myself feel. So to set the scene for you, I'm currently walking through North Hollywood. I have taken my car in. It's getting new struts so that it can strut its stuff. This is a comedy podcast. So I'm walking through North Hollywood, and I've decided I'm going to kill 3 birds with one stone. I'm going to get my car serviced. It's going to take until 2 p.m. And while it's taking until 2 p.m., I'm going to walk from North Hollywood to Burbank. And while walking from North Hollywood to Burbank, I'm going to record the podcast. I'm currently carrying my laptop case and also a bike helmet, but not currently on a bike. So I feel like I look like a character in the beginning, maybe the early middle of a Scorsese comedy. Was that one, Out All Night? That's not the name of it. All Night. Several severe tragedies are about to befall me. I've never really walked through the neighborhoods of North Hollywood before, and there's a lot of differences between this North Hollywood neighborhood and the Burbank neighborhood I usually walk through. Really, there's one difference. Everyone's got fences in North Hollywood. A lot more fences, a lot more precautions in this area. A lot more concern about attacks from armies. That's what it feels like as I'm walking through. A lot more fences. It always makes me a little bit nervous. Everything makes me nervous, but when every single house, or at the very least, pretty much every single house along this row has fences, and that doesn't inspire confidence in an area, does it? And they're all really nice houses, or at least they seem, the roofs seem nice. It's hard to tell through some of the 10-foot tall walls and the laser guided missiles that are pointed at me if I pass the threshold. All right, now I'm being a little hyperbolic. I'm also curious to see just how long it will take to walk basically from Lankershim to downtown Burbank. But I figure the reason why I brought the helmet was that if I got tired, I could use one of those scooters and then get hit by a car, and the helmet would not prevent me from dying. That's my plan for this beautiful Monday morning, basically. But, it's my intent to do a 1-hour podcast. And by a 1-hour podcast, I mean 50 minutes of podcasting. And it should be 50 minutes of podcasting and 10 minutes of commercials, but I don't even do that. I do fake commercials in the middle. And then I do other fake things all the way through. I should probably be careful about talking about this neighborhood while in the neighborhood when there are fences. There's a fence and a no trespassing sign. I got the general idea about the no trespassing from the fence, but thank you for just reaffirming that. Ooh, this one's got a fence and a beware of dog, and an inner fence, an outer fence and an inner fence. That's the one I want to be in the zombie apocalypse right there. And the one next to it has this more decorative wooden fence. Like, must be a fun relationship right there. There's like a survivalist next to a vegan, and two different walks of life. Iron fences, there's machine guns, and then right next to that, oh, look, there's a vegetable patch. And they have the person's got a trampoline. That's the second. There's a lot of trampolines in this neighborhood. The trampoline is an interesting concept, isn't it? You know, our species comes out of the water, moves from 4 legs to 2, begins using crude tools, develops into civilizations, agriculture, builds more and more sophisticated machinery, land transportation, sea transportation, air transportation, travels into space, pioneers medicine, understands building blocks of human life at the genetic level, and gets to the point where we become the apex predator, and we have the time and the energy and the will and the desire to bounce on a trampoline. That trampoline is a representation of all that we have conquered from this world. Maybe if we ever meet God, that's what we'll find. Like a lot of weird, bizarre things that God plays with because he's the apex of the universe. You walk into heaven and the first thought is, there's a lot of pogo sticks here. This is, forgive the wordplay, but an ungodly amount of pogo sticks. Is this all the guy does? Suddenly there are no fences. How did that happen? I've only walked 1 block and suddenly we've entered. Does there just no crime here? Do the criminals just stop at whatever that last street is? Oh, there we got. This is one of my favorites, is the front lawn that looks like a miniature desert. So there's a bunch of cacti and rocks. It's very eco-friendly. Not a lot of water being wasted. I like those lawns. The only problem with that lawn, I love the practicality of that lawn, but there's a part of me that's like, you're not really it. Well, it's designed to look like a desert, but it's, how do I describe it? It's the reduced or idealistic version of the desert. You know, it reminds me not so much of the desert, but of the painting of a desert that you find in a hotel near the desert. That's more what it looks like. You know, 2 cactuses, the moon, a coyote, and coyote is usually red. And you know what? I have nothing against the painting. I have nothing against the landscaping. That's fine. Let's be minimalist here. That's okay. This isn't a judgment. I'm just making connections. I'm just trying to entertain you. All right, heavy traffic here. Well, look at this. My podcast has sound effects, ambient noise. Can't say that about Marin. Maybe if he left the garage more often. I think his podcast is fine. Laptop's heavy. That's what I'm learning from this. The laptop is heavy, and I don't know. I'm not used to walking with a laptop. What if I can't make it? You know, that's interesting about the traffic is that I have more. I'm feeling like I have to talk over it, but it's giving me more freedom to express my emotions. I'm not having to talk in a hushed tone. We're back to fences, by the way. Now this makes sense because this is a busier street. But yeah, there was a whole block there. I should be careful about this. I'm practically giving the criminals the location of houses to hit. Yeah, I wasn't sure what house to hit, but then I listened to this podcast. I was one of only 11 listeners. See? It pays to be a criminal listening to podcasts that no one else listens to. You get tips on which houses to hit. You know, there's a lot of tips that one criminal passes down to another criminal when a family of criminals. And this is one of those tips. Look for the podcast that no one else is listening to. That's where you'll get what you need to know about the neighborhood. Now, North Hollywood has a reputation. There's a higher degree of homelessness, and I can assume from the fences there's been a history of crime. What we're seeing is a reaction to something. But I also feel like there's more personality. There's something about the fences. Because I work in Burbank, so I'll walk around the neighborhoods in Burbank. No fences in Burbank, or far fewer fences anyway. But the fences, and the feeling of unkeptness and the more urban as in just, the esplanades aren't taken care of. They're overgrown. I think I prefer this in a way because it feels more honest, the North Hollywood. Because life is at once beautiful and hard. And there's joy and suffering. I didn't mean for this podcast to get this dramatic. And all I'm really trying to do, by the way, right now I'm actually kind of not going in the right direction. I'm just trying to find Magnolia Boulevard. I don't even know if I can walk down Magnolia. There might be too much noise, but I want to at least get my bearings. All right, so now we're at Burbank Boulevard. I could walk down Burbank Boulevard. I could do that. That's a possibility. In fact, I should be getting close to the that bike path. The bike path. What's the bike path? It's called something. It's that North Hollywood bike path thing. Now the question is, should I go down Burbank Boulevard or should I... By the way, I'm walking by a Fat Burger. I've never been to a Fat Burger. I don't mean to disparage the Fat Burger franchise. I mean, they've been around. Presumably, there's a reason. Presumably, the burgers that they're offering offer something. But I guess my question about Fat Burger is I think I've avoided going into Fat Burger because of the name. Because I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't sound healthy. But then it occurred to me as I'm talking about this, maybe what they mean to say is that it's the burger that's fat, not me. They're not saying I'm fat. They're saying the burger. Check out this fat burger. It's fat because it's filled with things. Much more value with this burger as opposed to that burger over there, the wafer-thin supermodel burger that's going to get cast in all the movies, unlike this fat burger, because we live in a society where thin is prized over fat. So that's my thought there on that. That's my PHAT burger riff. Okay, I'm walking by the Science Academy, which I think is a high school, right? East Valley High School, Science Academy, STEM magnet. All right, halfway through the title, I suddenly lost anything of what that meant. Like East Valley High, understood that. That's the name of a high school. STEM magnet. That sounds like something Mr. Fantastic invented to fight Dr. Doom. Get the STEM magnet. Without the STEM magnet, we won't be able to subdue Dr. Doom. Johnny, how many times have I told you, don't touch the STEM magnet? It has highly charged muon particles. Muon particles, Johnny. Muon particles. What I love about this public school is it continues the long-standing tradition of taking bricks and cinder blocks and painting it colors that don't make you feel very warm or happy. Let me describe the wall around this high school, which could be a prison when I look at it. Cinder blocks, painted black, or maybe charcoal gray. Very impressive. This is where I want to hide in the zombie apocalypse. Behind this wall. But it's really a harsh looking wall. And there's some vines on part of the wall, which is the vines are nice. Okay, there's some nature. Now it feels a little bit more like maybe this could be Professor X's public high school because of the vinage. The Chandler, that's what it is, the Chandler Walk. I'm coming across it right now. I could take the rest of the time and just walk down the Chandler Walk. And I have some trepidation because people will be able to listen to me as I'm talking much more. But maybe that's the risk I have to take. Maybe I have to start getting more okay with being around people. I'm still very nervous being around people. Incredibly nervous. It does not feel good being around people. And then again, maybe I never felt good around people, and this pandemic only exacerbated it. I can't say for sure. I'm already regretting this decision. I think I'm actually going to cross the street because there's fewer people and walk on the sidewalk next to the Chandler Park, the Chandler bike path. I don't know what this is called. You must take the Chandler path. Take the ring to the end of the Chandler path and pawn it to the Burbank pawn shop. And that will defeat Lord Sauron. No, this feels better. because all these people are going to be on the other side on the bike path, biking or walking, getting in their steps for the day. I've never actually done this walk, which is a hip euphemistic way of saying that I'm getting tired. Maybe I should have just stayed in the service department at the Honda place. But it's going to take until 2. I don't want to be gone until 2. The question is, how do I get back? Do I use one of the scooters? I could theoretically just scooter my way through the Chandler Pavilion. That might be a way to go. Assuming I can find a scooter in Burbank. I stopped seeing them in Burbank. Part of the reason why I like doing this, if I have no car right now and I know I need to get to work, is that when there's a reason to walk, it doesn't feel so much like exercise, it's just a necessity. And I end up, if I know I'm exercising, that's when I get tired. Whereas if I know I have to get somewhere and it's just about having a practical reason for doing it, actually, I still get tired now that I say that. But that need, that reason, that need to get there keeps me going. This is turning into a really bad Kerouac. I never read Kerouac. What was the name of his book? On the Road. The Road Not Taken. No, that's Robert Frost. Do you think Kerouac could have done what he did? Gone on the American road and found the poetry of the American experience if he had irritable bowel syndrome? Do you think that would have worked? Just found out Jack Kerouac suffered from irritable bowel syndrome. Did you see his new book, On the Road, in fits and starts, on and off the road, on and off and on and off and on and off the road. Great read, especially if you're on the toilet. That's not the name of the book. I think The Road is in the name of the book, right? Am I totally off? I'm walking past a construction site, and the building is fancy looking. There's an overhang that is angled, which says that this is a building that is owned by somebody who's thinks outside the box. That's what that building says. We're going to think outside the box. You make the roof, make the roof lopsided. That's how outside the box we think. What do we do here? We make boxes. They actually need to be fairly straightforward boxes. But the building can be outside the box. Well, the building was already going to be outside the box because we keep the boxes in the building. All right, Timothy, shut up. Just make the roof lopsided, all right? All right, I've transitioned to the Chandler bike path. Let me tell you why. There were some homeless people, and I was scared. So I went to the Chandler bike path, even though they're the ones suffering and our society has totally failed them. But I'm scared. Oh, what's this? the studio. Live, work, create. Live/worked lofts. Wow, guys, I just found something that I can't afford. I cannot afford this. Look at me not being able to afford this. You're witnessing me fall in love with the idea of a live workspace. That's something that I cannot afford. This podcast, you are witnessing me have a dream, look up the price tag and go, that's going to remain a dream for the foreseeable future. Oh, you lease them. Interesting. Well, leasing in North Hollywood equals, are you a millionaire or more? Well, I can ask. Oh, maybe. See what happens when you go on a walk and make all these discoveries. And the other thing I noticed, that the homeless person I was avoiding because I'm a terrible person, instead of, trying to help them, was talking to himself, which is part of what freaked me out. Now, the irony of that is that I am currently talking to myself. The only difference is I am holding, clearly, my phone up to my mouth, talking to myself in the phone. He did not have anything that he was talking into. Is there a difference between the two of us? Or maybe he's got better tech. Just passed by a sign that said rabbit found. They found a rabbit. Somehow they knew it was a pet rabbit. Maybe the rabbit had a collar. The rabbit have a microchip. Did they microchip that rabbit? They found the rabbit. Call this number. I hope it's not a trap. It feels like that could be a trap for Elmer Fudd. Serial killer out there that's hunting Elmer Fudd. This could be an episode of Dexter. I like it. All right, I'm passing by Kohanga. If I were in the car, this would have been 2 minutes. It has now taken me an hour. I'm 28 minutes into a podcast. I'm walking by the Iliad bookshop, which is a cool little bookshop. It's a new and used books. Not a big chain, mom and pop. Always a good vibe in there. I enjoy that bookshop. I hope they're doing okay during this. Looks like they're still around. I have made one observation about used bookstores. And hopefully anyone listening to this who owns a used bookstore will have a bit of a sense of humor, but I sometimes wonder when I walk into a used bookstore, is it a used bookstore or is this a hoarder who's got a side hustle? Because sometimes, it's a lot of books in this bookstore. It doesn't feel like Barnes & Noble where it's, there's space in between the shelves and, it's ventilated. And there's a coffee shop. Now this is just wall-to-wall books. Not even sure it's a bookshelf. There is no bookshelf. It's just books stacked on top of books, stacked on top of books. There's no order to it. Just a sign that says fiction. There's a paperback book that looks like it might be either a mystery or a cookbook, you're not sure. It's called the Kaiser Agenda. It's made in the 70s. written in the 70s. We're saying made in the 70s. The Kaiser agenda. Here's what creeps me out about looking at all these used books. The used books, this is what creeps me out. Volumes and volumes and volumes of books written by people I've never heard of. And I think that's what, like there's a big part of me that I'm always trying to measure what my success is. How successful am I? And part of it for me is, will anything I do be remembered long after I'm gone? Of course, the irony of worrying about this is that once I'm gone, it really doesn't matter. But I guess what I'm looking for are early indications that whatever I put out there hits so hard. I think the way that I could tell that is if, I've talked about this before, I'll talk about it again. I'll know I've made it if they teach what I do in high school and it's very boring and terrible for the students. That's how I know I'll have made it. Show Nathaniel Hawthorne a bunch of students reading The Scarlet Letter with pained expressions on their faces, and he'll say to himself, I did it. I left my mark. My letter A is for author. No fences now. No fences in these houses. Oh, there's one up ahead that has a fence. It would be impossible for me to do this in August. It would be way too hot. But fortunately, we're in what's called the June gloom. Even though it is May, we are in the June gloom. The place I'm walking by right now has an actual bona fide treehouse. In all fairness, it's a prefabricated treehouse. So they could never use that treehouse in a movie. The treehouse in a movie always has to look like the dad or the mom or whoever built the treehouse, even though it was built by an incredibly professional set designer with a team of 20 people working 24 hours a day. Leasing live workspaces. Those must be $1 million each. I need the live workspace for the starving artists, which I believe is the underpass of the 5 freeway. Replacing the struts. That's what they're doing to my car right now. And he said they don't have new struts, they have aftermarket struts, which hopefully is fine. He says you'll save money and we can do it today. What's the downside? You'll be back tomorrow. Okay. It's not as much of a strut, these aftermarket struts. They don't really strut so much as walk calmly. Like, new struts have that, you could tell I did it, I'm a ladies' man, or whatever it is. I never saw. Is it Saturday Night Fever? Never saw the movie. Too many bell-bottoms, not enough spaceships. It's my only issue with that movie. I'm sure it's a great movie, but if it took place in space, I would have seen it. In fact, one of the ways I know that movie exists is from when they were making fun of it on The Simpsons. That's where I know most of my culture. If The Simpsons made fun of it, I kind of know what you're talking about. And I'm crossing the street so as not to get hit by the car that had to slow down because I jaywalked. Your Honor, I'd like to submit this podcast. If you listen to it, you'll hear the defendant admitting that he was jaywalking. I can't listen to a podcast. Let them go. I can't do it. It's 28 minutes into the podcast. Can't you fast forward? We can't. We have to listen. No. I'm not making the jury listen to this whole thing. Let them go. Just let them go. It's fine. Let them go. Just don't do it again. The jaywalking, no. The podcasting, don't do it again. You're recording a podcast while you're walking to work. What's the matter with you? Mark Maron has a professional setup. He has a producer. He books the podcasts with guests who people might find interesting. He has prepared comments. What are you doing? You should be on trial for this podcast, not for jaywalking. You recorded the podcast while walking through North Hollywood. Are you out of your mind? It is a crime to walk through North Hollywood without having a fence around you at all times. You don't know what could happen. You might run into some homeless people and feel guilty for not helping your fellow man. All kinds of crazy things can happen in North Hollywood. I'm walking underneath these giant power lines right now, and I can hear the tinkling of the electricity, which always makes me nervous. Probably not something that a living being should be near. Not particularly healthy. There are houses right near these power lines, and the people in them have powers now. One person's power, he can smell the dead, which we all can do, really. It's actually not really a power. I can smell the dead. We can all do that. I mean, can you smell them from farther away? No, I got to be up right next to them. That's not a power. It's not a power, Mr. Johnson. Please go back home. Do you live under power lines? There's a higher instance of people who live under power lines who think they have superpowers, but they're actually just regular things that any human can do. Like Mr. Anderson, who thinks he has the superpower of being able to plant things in a garden. That's not a superpower, Mr. Anderson. Anyone can do that. Ooh, I just walked by a series of gardens where they put up a sign saying these are pollinator-friendly gardens. Gardens where insects can come and pollinate and help the environment. I love that they put up that sign. Can I just say right now, like, it's one thing to help the environment. It's another thing to post a sign about it. As if to say to the person passing by, what are you doing? What are you doing to help the world? This is a pollinator-friendly garden. You're not a friend of the pollinators. You're a pollinator foe. I bet you swatted a bee. You miserable excuse of a human being. You take your podcast and you get out of North Hollywood. I think I'm getting closer to Burbank. I'm beginning to feel the change from North Hollywood to Burbank. Fewer fences. And the roads are getting wider. I feel like the slogan for Burbank should be, Burbank, we knew there was going to be growth. That's why we have wider roads. Burbank, we don't know why anyone else in LA thought that these narrow roads would be fine forever. Well, I'm certainly getting my steps in today. The question is, how am I going to get back? Am I going to force someone at work to give me a ride? Am I going to be one of those people without pre-planning? Maybe. Maybe I will be one of those people. But we must continue on. I'm walking by someone, so I'm going to pretend I'm just talking on the phone. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. We should definitely look at the third quarter numbers on that. Yeah, let's look at the third quarter number. Okay, I passed the person. Now I can go back to talking about my North Hollywood analogies. Can I tell you something, by the way? The person I just passed, just between you and me, I don't think they were pollinator friendly. I'm throwing that out there. I did not get a pollinator friendly vibe from that person. They seemed pollinator neutral at best. Here I am making fun of the pollinator friendly people. I am not the one who owns the house. I just want to remind everyone of this. All right. This looks like a big street. What street is this? Please, God, tell me it's Buena Vista. If it's Buena Vista, I think it means halfway there. Oh, it's Hollywood. It's Hollywood Way. All right, that means I only have 2 hours to go. This was a terrible idea. Actually, this was the spot where Dave and I were protesting a couple of years ago. Actually, I guess 3 years ago by this point. We had these protest signs that we were holding up about the prisons that they were throwing the illegal immigrants in at the border. That must have been right when Trump first got in, because they were separating the families at the border. So the two of us, were holding up protest signs, and people were honking occasionally. And maybe it helped. I don't know. I don't think it helped. Maybe it did. Maybe on the day of judgment, we enter heaven, and after being shocked at all of the pogo sticks, God comes out of his giant pinball room, and he's like, "You two, you held up the signs. You're good. You're good people. You can come in. You each get a pogo stick." That's all we do here: pogo stick and pinball. Pogo stick and pinball, which sounds like the name of an 80s Nintendo game. What was the name of that Nintendo game about the Ratchet and Clank or something? Pogo stick and pinball. That's the spinoff. Interdimensional warriors. One of them's probably a bunny. The other one is some kind of cute-looking robot. It's a robot, but it kind of has a Care Bears vibe. Dare I say, similar to the Robo Burble of Thundercats fame. Passing by another power line area. Now, my other thought was that if I got tired enough, I would just get a lift. But it kind of feels lame to get a lift in the middle of this epic journey from North Hollywood to Burbank. Which for me is an epic journey, but for anyone else would be not that big of a deal, because North Hollywood and Burbank are next to each other. I'm going to definitely need to hydrate myself, which brings me to my first fake commercial of this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by pollinator-friendly water. This water is bottled in a plant that has pollinator-friendly gardens around it. The water itself is frankly just tap water, but it's bottled in a pollinator-friendly plant. Are you tired of walking around being the only person who can't do anything to brag about helping the world be a better place? Drink pollinator-friendly water. Sure, the water's, just tap water. But because we have pollinator-friendly plants around our plant, we We euphemistically like to call it the pollinator-friendly plant. I'm not even sure if euphemistically is the right use of the word euphemistically in this commercial at this moment. Somebody should have proofread the copy. But we didn't have time, because pollinator-friendly gardens are not something that you just will into existence with the snap of a finger. We work hard, getting up day and night, making sure that our gardens are pollinator-friendly, making sure that whenever a bee or a wasp comes into our garden, not only do they have the plants they need to continue this ecosystem, but we also give them a spa treatment and a gift card to an Applebee's. Now, what, you ask, would a bee need with a gift card to an Applebee's? And the answer is one word. It is one word. It has been one word. It ever shall be one word. The quesadillas at Applebee's. Fit for a bee. A bee that frequents a pollinator-friendly garden, like the one here at Pollinator-Friendly Water. Pollinator-friendly water. You take that water, you drink that water. Sure, it's tap water. Sure, it has microplastics in it just like everything else. But then you take the bottle, which says pollinator-friendly on it, and you beat the living daylights out of the nearest vegan with that bottle to show them that you too are a force for good in this world. Pollinator-friendly water. I don't know about you, but I'd buy that product right now because I'm very thirsty. I didn't plan this at all. I have no substance. And granted, I am in a city. I could get some water or a lift or anything very easily with the click of a button. But then, how could I keep recording this podcast? Actually, I could do both. My phone can handle multiple apps at the same time. But the roads now in Burbank have become so wide, I have to choose between getting to my destination, which is 5 miles away, or crossing the street to get a beverage, which is also 5 miles away. I must press on. Now here's a very significant question. We're coming up on that 50-minute mark. We're also coming up on a leaf blower. Can I throw this out there? What if this was all done in a studio, and the whole intent of this podcast was to make you think I was just walking through North Hollywood, and I had all these sound effects, these atmospheric effects, and I'd done all this research to replicate actually walking through North Hollywood. That would have been insane, but also way easier on my body. But this is good exercise, right? This is a good exercise. Oh, somebody's walking by. I got to sound like I'm talking on the phone again. Yeah, so, and then I think what we'll do is we just need to make sure we don't delete those spreadsheets. But I think once we transfer it to the Google Drive, then yeah, the spreadsheets on the local drive, you can just delete those. All right, he's passed. I mean, I'm not talking on my phone, like I'm just holding my phone like it's a dictaphone. Like I'm dictating. I'm pretty sure I know the guy who just drove by in that moving van. I think that was Joe. I wonder if Joe recognized me walking down the street, holding a bike helmet that he's probably not going to use in one hand and the laptop bag in the other. I don't think this garden is pollinator free. Sorry, I just have to take a moment and mourn the waste of time and space. Yeah, I'm not sure about this one either. There's no sign, so how do I know? This could be a totally self-indulgent garden. We don't know. We don't know. This might actually be a 2-hour walk. But that leads to the question, should this be a 2-hour podcast? Or could this be, dare I suggest, a part 1 and a part 2? Look, people, we got to generate a lot of content. There's no reason why one podcast should be 2 hours and the other one should be 10 minutes. I think that's what I'm going to have to do. I think that, we're at 50 minutes. All right. Well, tune in for part 2. Will I get to my job? Will my pollinator-friendly water business actually take off? Will I be able to build a fence around myself in enough time to be okay being in North Hollywood? Find out on the next exciting Nerdy Virgin podcast.